Hello everyone, it's Eric Saturn again, and thank you for experiencing part 8 of Brewing with the Baron. Today we're going to be discussing wine. Come on, gotta put some type of flair in here. Alright, I don't have very many small bottles left, so for this exercise we're going to be using the 6.5 gallon largemouth carboy. We don't need to use it because we're not putting fruit or anything there. So it's mainly going to be grape juice, but just to show you that this can be multi-purpose, you can use it for anything for brewing. So as we talked about before, you have pretty much what you have the major ingredient of. So for meads, the main ingredient is going to be honey. For ciders, the main ingredient is going to be apples. For wine, the main ingredient is going to be grapes. Now you can use green grapes, red grapes. It's all about what you want for a flavor profile. I usually like green grapes. I think they're a little sweeter. The other nice thing about wines is there's usually not a lot of additional herbs or spices or even fruit that's usually added to it. A wine is just a certain one particular thing. Like I mentioned before, my friend had made dandelion wine, choke cherry wine. Another person had made rhubarb wine, which I said was terrible. It's so sour. But as with everything, you can make it unsour by putting a lot of sugar in. They put a lot more sugar than the 3 pounds of sugar per 1 gallon. They usually double fermented it, made it really strong with a lot of sugar, and then they'd add a lot of sugar at the end. Back then, most of the time, except for saccharin, there really wasn't a sugar substitute. So they just always added more sugar into it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to make the wine with, instead of just straight sugar, which you can. So the most basic recipe is apple juice and sugar. And that's it. That is pretty much how most wines are. They might get some flavor additives by, if they're put in wooden barrels or anything like that, they're going to get some different flavors. But green grape or white grape juice will create a very limited type of flavor. Red grapes, they can actually have a bigger flavor spectrum. So you can do that, but like I said, I'm not a big red grape fan, so I'm going to use the white grapes or green grapes. So, as I said before, to save on time, I pretty much sterilize all my equipment ahead of time. So we just can go straight into the process. If you want to go and see how you sterilize stuff in the first 2 classes, part 1 and part 2, or if the first one wasn't part 1, the very first one shows exactly what you need to do to sanitize all your equipment safely, food grade, so it's not going to kill the yeast, contaminate, or anything like that. So what we're going to do is we're first going to put in the grape juice. Now remember, as I said in the first tutorial I had, if you want to do this for the very first time, just take one of these 2-quart bottles that you get at the store. Just get a stopper and an airlock. Stick it on there, put some yeast in, and that can be your very first try at making wine. Now, specifically for the wine, you're going to really get either a dry, semi-sweet, or sweet flavor of a wine. Mainly because you're just using either just the grape juice and the sugar. I'm actually going to use maple on this one. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to just give a slight flavor difference. I did not bring any allspice with me today, but I'm going to use a vanilla extract after I get the fermentation finished. With the maple and allspice, and I'm going to put a little bit of the butter extract in with it. What I want to do is kind of create almost like a Cinnabon type flavor wine. It's still a wine, but it's going to have a nice little light flavor taste, maybe even a slight aroma, but it's just mainly going to be just wine. So after all this is done for the 2 weeks, I'm going to have roughly, to include the 2 10 gallons that I did a month ago at home. They're still bubbling, by the way. The 2 that have started bubbling here, the pomegranate and the apple, are still going. The mead one, the second one that we did, is just starting to create a foam or a froth on top. So that one should start bubbling here in the next couple of days. So let's see, with this one we will have 15, 20 gallons, 26, 27, 28, and the two quarts, 29. So we will have about 29 gallons of meads, ciders, and wines that we've created in 2 weeks. So yeah, when we get done with this quarantine and people are no longer restricted to 6 feet, there's going to be a lot of happy people drinking this. So, put one more in and then we'll start putting in the maple syrup. And just to recap again, for the last week and a half that we've been doing this, we have used everything from honey to regular sugar to powdered sugar to brown sugar to molasses, and now we're using maple syrup. So like I said, you can use any sweetener that you think is a good combination. And like we did last Friday with the taste test, some different sweeteners will give a different flavor profile to some of the stuff. All right, now put the maple syrup in. As you can see, this is coming out a lot easier than the honey. As you can also see, it's going to start changing the color darker. We talked about this yesterday, that whenever you start brewing, if you're thinking, wow, that's a really dark color, it's not really what I want. Remember, after it starts to ferment, and the more you change it from your first fermentation to a second fermentation bottle and everything, it's going to start getting lighter. So don't worry about the fact that it's darker than you estimated. Now, the other nice thing about the maple syrup is, besides it being easily coming out and you don't have to deal with the thickness and the longevity of it getting out of the bottle, is you also don't have to heat it up like you do with honey. course, again, I'm going to go stir it. And also, like I said yesterday, say you want to try and instead of having, I'm using 6 bottles of syrup, maybe you want to have just a hint of a flavor, of a maple flavor. So you can use 3 bottles and do the other 3 in straight sugar. Or, if you're not sure about the flavor of maple, after you've fermented it, you can actually put a little bit of maple extract into different bottles. So you say, oh, I'm going to put 2 drops into this bottle. No, still not enough. I'll put 2 more, 4. Okay, that's a good flavor. I want to try 6 to see how strong it is. Okay, 6 is way too strong. So 4 or 5 is what I'll do in each bottle to give it a hint. So you can still have a maple flavor, but still use just straight all sugar. And now that I got all of you here, I'm going to also start informing you of tomorrow we will be doing cordials. So I'm going to use cherries as my main fruit for the cordial. And then on Friday, we're going to be talking about bottling. So I'll show you the different types of bottles you can use, the benefits of certain kinds, anything like that. Now, also, once you get done, you can still keep, instead of just a straight bottle, you can still keep it in the 1-gallon jug. You can have it in the 5-gallon glass carboy, whatever you prefer. There is no requirement that it's got to be in a bottle or anything like that. But next week, since I've been having quite a few people look at this, which I'm very happy about, thank you very much for keeping interest in. And also, please ask me questions, give me comments, say, hey, what do you think would be for this? We can come up with different ideas. I'd love to share it with everyone that's watching. But also, starting next week, I'm going to go down to 1 video presentation a week. And it's not going to be just about brewing. We'll keep brewing informed, just show everyone the status of how everything is. And then we'll probably go to maybe 2 or 3 for a week or so to show how we're going to transfer from the first fermentation to the second fermentation bottle, just to keep everyone up to date. Hey, what's the status? So if you are actually doing this at home for the first or second time, you can now estimate, hey, it took him 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Mine started sooner, mine started a little bit later, but at least you can give a relationship or a correlation between what you're doing and what's going on here. Also, I'm going to start doing some additional videos. So next week, I'm going to be doing shooting with a Baron. So what I'm going to do on that is give you hints and helpful pointers on when you're doing archery, how you can stand better, aim better, control your shot grouping better, everything like that. We're also going to be doing dancing with the Baron, and whatever I can think about with the Baron, we'll still keep on going. Hopefully you guys will still enjoy it, keep on watching. If the numbers start to go down, then I know that, well, I'm just boring you. So I'll stop for a little bit. But hopefully that won't happen. All right, the last bottle of the maple syrup. So much easier to dissolve. Same thing, if you like the liquid aspect What I showed before is a light corn syrup. That is also a nice way to have it dissolve very quickly without heating it. Also the blue agave sweetener, which I quite like. It has a nice flavor to it. Let that settle down a little bit. We'll still put a couple more in there. One of the things that I haven't really done except for one time, mainly because it was just a pain, is I've been using pre-bought juices and everything like that. Pretty much I try and get everything that is usually not from concentrate, so it's as close to natural as possible. But if you want to actually get a juicer, you can actually juice your own apples, your own grapes. You can try different juice combinations. So you might be able to say, you know what? I want apple and peach. So you can juice apples and peaches together. Now, when you do that, you're going to get more than just juice sometimes. You're going to get some of the fiber, some of the pulp and everything like that. That's fine. That will ferment just as good as anything else, or as solid pieces like we did yesterday. Or what you can do is do the filter. Like I said, this thing has a filter that you can put inside to allow the stuff to still get flavor and transfer from solid to liquid. You can also, with a big mouth carboy, or as this is called a bubbler, you can go and take cheesecloth, put fruit in there, and then you can just stick it in there, cap it off, and it's not going to go anywhere. You can tie it off, or you can actually put it in, if you got enough cheesecloth, put it in there and put the lid over the top. I would suggest not doing that, just to make sure that you got a solid seal, but just to tie it off and throw the bag in there and let it sit and let it soak. You're going to get some flavor. I don't know if it's going to be as much flavor. Like I said, I only did it one time, and it was just a lot of work. But if you're really a purist and you want to do that, then that's great. I would also say, if you really want proper, I would not take a juicer to apples. What I would do is I would actually go someplace that actually has an apple press. And if you have a nice little harvest thing in the fall and everything, they usually have like pumpkin patches or apple harvest. Just go directly there. If you want to pick your own apples, bring the jug over, they'll put it in the press, and you're going to get your freshly picked pressed apple juice that you can take home. That's the easiest and smartest, because you don't have to buy all the equipment. And after all that, you're like, you know what? It really has no taste difference. Or it's like, man, I just spent 3 days doing this. Maybe it'll be easier if I just buy the jugs at that harvest store or whatever like that. Now, one of the other things that I have not done, but I really want to try, is actually just doing like just a straight mead. But I do it in a big, largemouth carboy, and actually go to a bakery and say, you know what? I wonder what actual bread yeast would do to my mead. So I would just do straight water and honey, and I would go on thinking, I wonder what rye bread would be like. What you can do is take rye bread. I've done the research on this, I haven't done it, but take the rye bread, crumble it up as much as you can, put it in the cheesecloth again, and get like almost a whole big 1 or 2 loaves, depends upon the size of the loaf, crumble it up, put it in the cheesecloth, and actually put it into the carboy. And don't add any yeast to it. See if it'll start to ferment on its own. Maybe you get a nice little rye underlying tone to your mead. Maybe you can do sourdough. That would be interesting. I like sourdough. Never tried a sourdough mead though. Could be interesting. But try different actual breads to get a different type of yeast activation, to get a different flavor. Alright, I'll save these two for later. Now, one of the other things is, oh, I got 2 extra. What am I going to do with these? Well, you can make another batch. You can do an individual one. Or what I do is I usually try and keep at least 1 or 2 bottles of the same juice batch that I start with for later. So when I do the first fermentation to the second fermentation, sometimes you're going to lose from the settlement to the pieces of fruit that you add in there, and it's going to go from here down to here. Well, at that point, just fill it up with the remainder of the juice, let it ferment for a second time. Never hurts. Like I said, another good thing about the largemouth ones, it's easy to stir. It's also easy to add products like the yeast nutrient, the yeast without having to use a funnel. So, since this is 5 gallons again, put 5, you put 5 teaspoons, since this is a tablespoon, I don't put as much as 5, but I put a little bit more than 2 in. And then of course, I add 10 scoops of my yeast. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And like I said earlier, I've already pre-cleaned all of this. Now, just to give you a heads up on a few things about the plastic bottles compared to the glass bottles. Once you get everything done in the glass bottles and you move it, it's going to be no problem. With the plastic does shift. So if you move it, you have to be very careful because it's going to suck in air and it's going to push out air every time you move it because the bottle is going to expand and contract. So whenever you move it to a specific situation or place, you set it there and then you put the stopper on so it doesn't suck in water or blow out water. But for the glass ones, they can be moved anytime. So just be careful and aware of that. Last thing you want to do is get everything ready and then all of a sudden you move it and all the water goes out or gets sucked in, making sure that the water doesn't get contaminated or spoiled. So I got the lid on, I'll move this over and then I'll stick the stopper and the airlock on it. All right, that's making wine. It's actually one of the easiest and fastest ones. Very little prep, very little additions. Like I said, you take grape juice and you just add sugar to it. Any type of sugar that you want. You can add a few spices, but it's not as, I want to say, elaborate as either a cider or a perry or a mead. Because those can be as easily as just fermenting apple juice or fermenting honey. The big thing is going to be the flavor profile that you want. With grape juice, to me, like I said, there's a very limited type of flavors you can add to it. You can add like subtlety stuff, like I was saying, I'm going to put a little bit of I'm putting maple syrup to get a little bit of the maple aspect to it, with a little bit of vanilla, and then that's pretty much it, instead of adding fruit. If you add fruit to grape juice, sometimes it overpowers it, sometimes it's not a good mixture, but most of the time you're going to be able to transfer a lot of stuff from one to the other. I've never tried grape juice with blueberry juice. To me, I'm thinking it's just, those probably would not meld together unless I put something in there like maybe a little bit of vanilla to kind of let the two connect. So that's why I go and use just subtlety flavors to add to the actual wine itself. Well, actually, that's it for today. It's a very easy, very quick, low prep. So hopefully you guys will give it a shot. I hope you guys continue to watch. And like I said, tomorrow we'll be doing cordials. And starting next week, like I said before, we will be starting different classes. So the next one will be shooting with the Baron. Like I said, I'll be showing you little tricks on why am I always shooting left. It's very easy. Why are my shots always straight up and down? That's very easy, actually. You might not know, or you do know. If you do know, but you still do it, I'm going to show you tricks on how to correct for it. So, hope you all had a good time, and keep on watching. Thank you.